in recess, so we'll reconvene at this time. And I'd like to say, first off, appreciate all the effort and time and work that's been put into the budget construction thus far from the manager and staff. It's a difficult task, and it might seem simple to some, but it's really not. It's very difficult, and I think we started off with about, what was it, 10 million over, $10 million, I should say, over the amount of money that we might have here, and to pare that down to get us to the point that we are today, and we'll proceed with the work of administering the public's funds in a sensible, reasonable, accountable manner. So we will begin with the museum.
Yes.
Is that the first one? Ms. Carey? Welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm gonna set a timer so I don't talk too long, because I have a tendency to do that.
We're gonna do the buzzer then.
Well, we'll just talk about the museum the whole time. So, thank you for letting me be here today, and I am gonna, is it gonna come up on there?
It is.
Okay.
Pull the presentation up.
I'm excited to be here to kind of let you guys know what's been going on for the past fiscal year, to report on the funds that you gave during that budget season, and then to kind of talk about what we're hoping to do in the upcoming fiscal year. So, I did a table of contents to keep us on track, just so you know what we're going to be talking about through the conversation, and also give you an opportunity to see that pretty picture there, because that's one of our fun exhibits. So, as you know, we requested $40,000 during the last budget session. We are so appreciative that you guys saw a way to support the museum that way. With those funds, we were able to expand our programming, work toward our self-sustainability model, and continue to meet those expectations in our mission statement. So we're pretty excited about what happened in 23-24. And here's how we use the money. Come on. There we go. Oop, no, go back. There we go. Our expenses broke down as we expected them to. If you look at this chart, 83% of the money went into either the facility, those buildings that the county owns, or into capital improvements for those buildings. So we had a lot of really great projects that we were able to complete throughout the year. That other 17% just went to support those visitor-facing programs and events, the overhead expenses that directly impact the visitor experience. So I just want to comment as well, and it's noted on here, none of those funds went towards salaries, personnel, anything like that at all. This is all for the buildings and the public experience. So what did those capital improvements look like? I could have given you a ton of pictures, but like you said, you actually have a whole budget to pass, so I didn't want to take your entire morning. But I think this is a pretty dramatic expression of what we're able to do. We did use those capital update improvements to do landscape work at the parsonage. That's the building that you see here. We also did work on the longhouse, which everyone knows is the Woody House. There were electrical updates. There were some updates that we actually got covered by a different grant. So we had to do some updates to electricity in the general store. A grant from Person County TDA paid for that. So that kind of helped us stretch that money even more. And I'm going to put this plug in now. We're going to be talking a lot about this particular building. I don't know, Ray's here, yay. So just keep that in mind. The exterior looks great, but we're going to have some conversations about that. So speaking of those grant-funded projects, I promise I know how to use electronics. Okay. I promise I do. Is it just me?
I think that's a little finicky.
Okay.
Are you trying to go forward one? There you go.
Nope, go back. There.
Okay.
I didn't want to miss this slide. This is our very dramatic before and after. So we understand that we can't rely on one source of revenue to keep the museum open. So we are continuously going out for grants. I'll tell you a little bit more about the grants that we're administering right now, but this is an example of what we're able to do with $9,750. We recreated a 1940s general store, and we are very proud. This particular exhibit has drawn people in from across the state. It was on the cover of Heiko magazine, and we got a lot of folks coming in from Virginia. It's been promoted in a variety of different ways, and we honestly haven't heard a negative, and we keep getting people donating things to help build it out even more. So we're proud, and I'm excited to share that with you. So you were part of helping make that happen. Thank you. Okay, so we obviously are hosting events. We're looking for a mix of free and paid fundraisers versus community service type opportunities. So we're really using this time to figure out how we can make the Longhouse work in that self-sustaining model as that revenue generation for events. So we have our supper club, we've had venue rental, we piloted our first workshop there, which was a really informative experience. Just logistically, keeping in mind it's not a conference room, it's a house. So trying to figure out where tables and chairs go and fire exits are and all of that. And we're also using that currently to pilot a paid exhibit opportunity. So our regular exhibits remain free, but we're able to utilize that space for a special exhibit that people pay a fee for. So we're just looking for different ways to bring in that revenue. And we love our kiddos, who would be much better with this clicker than I am.
Maybe we need a new battery.
There we go. Okay. So obviously youth are very important to the museum for a variety of reasons. One, we fully believe that it's important that everybody know where they come from, what made up the place that they live and call home. But we also know that those are our future volunteers, our future board members, our future supporters. So we're trying to make sure that we are relevant in their lives and just, it's not even a question. Of course, there's a museum in our community that tells our history. So we've been doing free field trips, interns from a couple of different places. RCS comes and volunteers. We had one day with 60 of them all at the same time. That was an adventure. And then we've also recently started working with Roots and Wings. We have several of their students that are coming to do community service, and it's been wonderful. They recently painted, and we are extremely grateful for that help. So we're just working to make sure that we are hitting all aspects of our community. And it skipped again. Okay. So, like I said, we don't expect to get all of the funding that we need from one place. So we are administering currently 3 grants. The first one is the updates to the second floor of the kitchen house, which is that main museum building. That is a grant from TDA for lighting. There was one sad little, I don't know if you can tell how dark that picture is. There was one sad little chandelier light up there. They are working this week, putting in great track lighting so we can better utilize that space for exhibits. The floors are being done as we speak. I've gotten pictures. They are gorgeous. It's fabulous hardwood that was under that ugly green carpet, which was a safety hazard. So that project is currently barreling forward, and we're very excited. The exhibits in that space will open up. By the end of the year, we'll start opening it, and then we'll gradually have more. We're also administering our oral history project, which is a focus on African American, Native American, military, and women's stories. This is funded through NC Humanities. The money is going towards someone to help administer the project because, just a reminder, there's only one employee at the museum and I can't be in a million places at once. So it's been really helpful because we're at risk of losing some of these stories and we just can't. We can't let that happen. So this project is instrumental in getting those. They're going to be digitized and available online for free through Digital NC. We're very excited. And then our last grant, that is an update to our African American exhibits. That's through the Federation of North Carolina Historical Societies. We've gotten a lot of state exposure through that because they sent out information in their newsletter, which goes to all of basically every historic site in the state. And that is going to allow us to do some updated lighting, exhibit panels, and it's important to note, I'm going to mention the parsonage again because we're going to talk about that. This exhibit is currently in the parsonage. It will be moving over to the kitchen house and will reopen in that space. So it's more available and accessible. So all of that, of course, all of these have to happen within the next, 6 months. So no pressure. And that brings me to how we do it. Like I said, we have one full-time employee and that's it. We do occasionally get a chance to pay for coverage, but for the most part, there's only one person paid to do all of the work that gets done. So the rest of it comes from our volunteers. In 2023, only 10 of our volunteers gave more than 3,000 volunteer hours. 3,000 from 10 people in 12 months. That's a lot. When you look at the national average, which is currently $33.49 an hour for volunteer service, that puts us well over $100,000 worth of value in 1 year. These same volunteers, I've done an informal poll of them. We're already over 1,000 hours up to May. So they're not stopping. They believe in us and we believe in them. Recently 10 of them were honored at the Governor's Volunteer Service Awards. So we were just really proud of them. They're amazing. And they are the reason that we're able to do all of our events. There we go. So we don't stop, keeping in mind we've got all the construction happening, all of the exhibits, all of the grants, and we're still hosting all the events. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but just to give you an idea of the mix between paid and free, different topics, just trying to hit as many avenues to reach people and raise funds as possible. It's important to note these teas and dinners that we're doing outside of our grants and our annual fund campaign. That's currently our most successful fundraising avenue. So we're just going to continue to explore that and expand it. This year we're getting to have 2 dinners. And we have about an 85% retention rate on our dinner guests. So they're obviously having a good time when they come. And that brings to who is coming, who is visiting, how many visitors are we getting. Our numbers are steadily increasing. I know there's some weird spikes in there because, for example, March of last year, we had way more than March of this year. That's because we had 2 field trips and an RCS volunteer day. So we had a lot of kids on the campus. And just so you know, every time they come volunteer, we make them tour the museum. So it's like a twofer, a field trip and a volunteer opportunity. So, but we're really excited about these numbers. They just continue to rise. And we're, everybody's working to come back from COVID. We're just doing the best we can. We have seen a lot, like I said, with the general store, a lot of folks coming from Virginia, a lot of folks coming from some of our more further surrounding counties. Titanic drew someone in from Holly Springs in Virginia, and then, we're reaching people outside of the county who are spending money when they come here. So, yay, thanks for that. So that leads us to our request for this fiscal year. And it's very similar to before. As this is our second time around with this money, we were able to sort of realign where certain expenses fall. So that's why the percentages look a little different, but it's all the same stuff. It just made more sense to fall out that way. And I want to stress that we are doing everything possible to stretch every dollar that you've given us. We buy secondhand. Person County Habitat for Humanity, they know me and my volunteers by face and name. We try to put that money back in and reuse as much as possible. Our annual fund, we are piloting this year an initial request via email to try to save on postage. We're going to see how that goes, and we may still need to go back to the old way of doing it, but we're doing everything we can to make sure that our money is being spent properly. But that being said, the museum, just like everyone else, things are more expensive. Our landscaping, I know we've had a pretty steady budget for, and I'm going to defer to Ray, who's sitting in the back here in a minute, to explain. I don't know how long, but it's been a pretty steady budget line item for a long time, and it's more expensive now than it was, I think, maybe 10 years ago when that amount was set. So there's just certain things that we're having to sort of plan for. But we did work to reduce our ask for overhead and to try to put as much of this request into things that are going into your county buildings. And there's more updates. Person County has a gym. Let me just say that. Every person that has come to the museum from outside of this community recently leaves with their jaw on the floor. They are amazed at what has been accumulated, and they're amazed that they didn't know it was here and hadn't been there before. So we're lucky. We're lucky to have all of these fantastic buildings that show examples of Person County history. However, they're old. Old buildings require a lot of care, and in addition to just addressing accessibility, which we're still working on with ramps and lifts and what have you, there's just needs in these buildings. There's rot in certain places. There's mold in certain places because we're still working on HVACs, and we have a lot of squirrels and critters that keep liking to chew on our HVAC cables, which is not appreciated. So we need to remember that we are stewards of these buildings. The schoolhouse, for example, is said to be the oldest example of that era schoolhouse in the state. The parsonage is individually on the National Register of Historic Places. It's said to be the oldest private residence still standing in Roxborough. The doctor's office is a fantastic example of an early 19th century experience that's universal to at least the state, if not the entire Southeast. So we have to take care with these buildings. The problem is they're historic buildings. We can't slap some vinyl siding up on this building and move forward because we're not respecting the historical integrity of it. So we're going to really need to think about how we're going to address some of these issues, what our options are. The parsonage, like I said, I was going to mention that one again. We have an indoor air quality issue. That building is now closed to the public. I can't take people inside. It's got mold. It was discovered in a safety inspection by the county and has been tested. The hearth has fallen, which, speaking of those critters again, now have a gateway directly in. We have peeling paint that we want to cover because it's an 1840 building. Pretty sure there's lead in there somewhere. And we can deal with all of that, but it is going to be interesting and fun and work. So we have this gym. There's a lot that we're going to need to work on to keep it. Ray is here if you have questions specifically about buildings, because he's sometimes, most times, more informed than I am about stuff like that. So nope. There we go. Just to wrap up, $40,000 may not seem like a lot of money. I know it's a very large budget number, but for the museum, it is a huge life-changing number that allows us to keep doing what we're doing. And we are so thrilled to be able to serve the public this way and just want to keep the momentum going and keep people invested and excited. So we are thankful to be partners with you, and we look forward to the rest of our partnership. Thank you. Ooh, that one did it right. Questions?
Which structure is the 1840?
1840 is the parsonage.
Parsonage?
The parsonage. The schoolhouse is 1810. The general store is 1893. The doctor's office is 1906. Our youngest building is 1920.
Okay. How do you do your electrical upgrades? Do you cut walls or do you run track?
Most of it is our track lighting.
Yeah.
We have, particularly in the kitchen house, it's plaster walls. So we're running tracks off of existing because plaster's not fun to work with.
Smart.
Yeah.
You don't cut walls,
No, not really.
especially plaster.
I think it's very important that we maintain the history here in Person County, and I appreciate everything y'all have done. With the money that we have given you, I think you spend it wisely, and I look forward to seeing even more changes as we go forward. I can remember touring that at the very beginning. I did a tour with you through the facility there in the house and stuff, and seeing what you've done now is just amazing. And with the projects and with the things you're doing to bring people in is very important too. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the volunteers. There's a lot of people putting in a lot of hours, and I thank them for volunteering to keep this going.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
It is a beautiful facility and well-maintained by the county and Ray's staff to, it's a showplace on that corner.
It is.
And people do appreciate it, especially when they come first time around. So we commend you for doing that. And I had contributed some items along that line, and in particular, specifically, the old VFW building, when it closed down, those items were in the trash can, ready to go to the landfill. So I boxed those up and carried them over. So that's an important part of Person County history, and appreciate what you're doing there. It's obvious. So again, thanks. However, as a board, we need to remember, it is a nonprofit. And going forward, we did an agreement for a one-time injection of funds, I'll say, to get things up and started and going. So, and we've done that. And we went over and beyond that. I believe the second year, was it 2 or 3 years? Two years we did that.
There's been a special appropriation in the first year of 20,000, in the current fiscal year of 40,000.
Right, so.
And the current request is for 40,000. So in the recommended budget, I had included $20,000 based on what I understood the board's desire to be for that to be kind of a bridge the gap funding initially, and then with the intent to cut back. I do want to note, as Carrie brought up, a recent safety inspection that was conducted by staff did find several issues within the buildings. We have consistently had a $30,000 maintenance and repair budget since these are county facilities. So that over the years, that is the level of investment, because we've pretty much stayed in alignment with that budget over many years. So we've continued to do maintenance of the buildings and repairs throughout the years, but there are certain things that are affecting the buildings now that need attention. So the board does need to give some thought to, your investment in those county-owned facilities and how, how that should be funded going forward.
So how is that gonna happen? Is that gonna come, whose budget is that coming from?
Right, so in the
Right.
current budget, there's still the $30,000 for maintenance and repair, and then it's recommended $20,000 for the special appropriation. So just, thinking ahead, is that enough, or does the board want to continue to invest additional dollars in improving those facilities?
So you got a 20 and a 30 figure.
30 for the maintenance, which is kind of our regular budget for that.
Now, is that included in the current budget? The 30?
30,000 this year, 30,000 recommended for next year for maintenance and repair.
Okay.
Can I elaborate
Yes,
on that a little
Ray,
bit?
please, and I'll find my
So-
budget page.
I guess I'm gonna back up a little bit in history. You know, when I came here, there was no direct funding or not a funding from my department to the museum. Came to the commissioners, museum asked for help, and, we established a budget to pay for the utilities, which has been consistently $16,000 a year. And we put in $30,000 for maintenance, but at that particular time, they earmarked mowing the grass or landscaping as being one of their big issues. So of that 30, 11,000 is red tagged for nothing but mowing. So once they, between landscaping, mowing, True Green, putting fertilizer and stuff, all that comes out of that 11,000. Once that 11,000 is reached, then it kicks it back to Carrie. Okay, you got to figure out where to fund the rest of it. So that left $19,000 for all maintenance issues that the county was doing. So, you know, you could think in three large houses, a store, a small school building, a doctor's office, and 2 outbuildings. You know, it doesn't take long for an air conditioner or 2 to break, and that 19,000 is gone. So basically, we have dedicated the general services budget to fixing breakdowns and repairs. I can't go in and do many modifications, upgrades, painting, repairs to make things better, because we're just trying to make the budget meet just doing major breakdowns. And so I guess that was, I guess my comment is not necessarily soliciting for money, but as the county, obviously the county owns these buildings, you know, if we're gonna maintain and improve on these buildings, it's like having 3 old farmhouses sitting out in the country. You know how wood buildings are gonna need issues. And as she said, we've got squirrels chewing through the rafters or chewing through the boxing. We've got rats, we got groundhogs. Amongst all the painting and, you know, between those buildings, you just about paint one every year and not keep your head above water, because it's just a constant need. So, all that being said, you know, basically, if we stay with the county budget as is, we have $19,000 to apply to maintenance, repairs, and upgrades, and that's, you know, that's all I have to dedicate to her efforts. And obviously, that's just not enough if you're gonna maintain those buildings the way you would want your house maintained, or the way that, we would maintain a county building. You know, I don't have, because it's kind of been handled differently, you know, generally, my staff is in and out of these buildings all the time. You know, we don't really go to the museum unless we're called and they got a problem. So it's not like we're in the vicinity and we're looking and say, okay, we need to do this or that. You know, it's pretty much on a call basis when we go up there. And that's just because of the budget restraints that we've dealt with, you know, since it was put in our budget.
Ray, do you have a figure that, that you would recommend to be, increased in the county budget?
I don't really have a number. I mean, it's, I think anything would be appreciated, but it's just, you know, those buildings need to be painted. They need to be, you know, pressure washed. There need to be a lot of repairs made where the wood is rotting. You know, I mean, just to take another $20,000 added to the county budget would certainly be a help. But until if you guys, you know, going forward, give me direction. Okay, Ray, you know, get involved more up there. What's needed? How much do we need to keep the buildings in pristine shape? Then yes, I can come back to you with a number. But you know, all I can say right now is there's just awful lot of needs up there between those old buildings.
So you feel like 20,000 would be a sufficient start to?
It would be a start in my budget, you know, and I'm not saying that, you know, in place of what she's asking for. I guess I'm saying that in addition to what she's
In addition,
asking.
absolutely.
Yeah, that would be a good start.
Just,
One is maintenance and one is,
So I think that
My-
Carrie's is oriented towards making improvements, right?
for the most part,
Yeah.
there is, and I'm not looking at the figure in front of me, so please don't hold me to this. I feel like about $6,000 is to supplement the maintenance that we get from general services. The other funds go, like I said, there's a certain amount of facility that is our alarm system. You know, we had asked, when we asked for the original money, the 40,000, we were asking for big updates. When I was talking about how we stretched the money, someone donated the cameras to us. So we got to take $11,000 that we had planned to put towards security and put it toward capital and other projects. So I would say a good 6,000 in there was that. And I would also like to mention when Ray was saying the 11,000 for landscape. So I don't know if you guys have been on Facebook lately, but we are a very popular photograph spot for Person County. So our landscaping, and let me tell you, I will get a phone call if our grass is a little bit too high. People are watching. They're aware of what's happening with the landscaping. Currently, it's 4 city lots, and we went through a bid process. We're paying almost $11,000 a year for the mowing. That includes some of the pine straw trimming, some gutters, a couple of times with the gutters. Our budget's $11,000. That doesn't count the sprinklers. That doesn't count the true green. That doesn't count any sort of update. That is literally just maintaining what's there. So it's just something to keep in mind that this year alone, I've been paying the last 2 months of the landscaping because we reached the budget. So that's coming out of the 40,000 that you guys had appropriated because, you know, we had to do it. The other issue with landscape that I would urge you to keep in mind is we had a lot of work to do because you can't have bushes and trees touching wood buildings. You just can't do it. So we have been in a multi-year process to get those off. And that is not cheap. I did have a volunteer though come up with his, what do you call those things? Little tractor with the bucket on it, and dig out the stumps. So I didn't have to pay stump grinding. And Ray knows, we try to use our volunteers as much as possible. The general services guys are amazing, but I do have volunteers that could do things that keep me from having to call them. So we're trying, but it's a lot.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned mowing the lawn, and I think that was 11 or 15,000,
11.
11,000 a year. Who does, is it a contractor outside?
Yeah.
Or is it,
Contract.
It's a contractor.
so we couldn't use general services to do that?
I mean, we could, I wouldn't have enough staff, I would have to add some staffing to enable us to add on the entire museum property, but basically, the museum had been contracted mowing up there forever and ever and ever. When they asked the county for money, we just agreed to supplement their cost $11,000. So it was $11,000 put in the budget to pay. So basically, the bills are submitted to the county pays the bill, is the way it works now, but it's the contractor selected by the museum and their board.
I was just curious, I would have assumed that general services handled that, but I am a proponent for preserving county history, every portion of it. And I have noticed, I've been there one time while you were in process.
You saw our mess.
Yeah, but you have did remarkably well outside. Had to keep up with what's going on inside, but it really looks sharp.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that you were in the spotlight on Facebook. People watching if the lawn gets a little bit too tall.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
They get called out and beat up. That's to be expected.
It is, and it is. I mean, they need to hold us accountable, and that's fine. I'm just letting you guys know that.
This is the county citizens' money, just making
Yep.
these improvements and keeping it alive.
Yep. And it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it is there for the community.
Right.
We're a nonprofit steward.
Right.
We're not making money, a lot of money off of this. But the goal is just to make sure it's preserved, and I think it shows with the way general services goes above and beyond for us when we call, the way our volunteers do. people care. It's important. It's worth it. Unfortunately, it just costs money.
Is there a way to prioritize these particular needs? As, you know, you talked about everything from painting to upgrading, upfitting, whatever, that it wouldn't all need to be done in one budget
No,
year?
that's sure, we could, you know, Carrie and I could sit down and put together a priority list of, I mean, it's hard to sit here and think out loud or everything, but just like the doctor's office and is not underpinned, and you got critters getting under there all the time, getting into ductwork. I mean, there's always things that need to be done. The old schoolhouse, the oldest one in the county has got, shingles falling off the roof and, groundhog chewed through the door. And so, but, you know,
Yeah.
those take special technique to preserve
Yeah.
because they are, you know, historical
I
and,
understand. Yeah, I understand
and
that.
that takes money, so.
Yeah.
But yes, to answer your question directly, we could put together a priority list.
And I sort of have one in my head, just so you know, from a safety perspective. The first line of defense is always the things that are gonna keep people safe. So things like the roof in the schoolhouse not falling on visitors when we open the door, that's a biggie for me, things like that.
Several years ago, I was, when Kathy
Young.
was running it, we ran over a few things up there, and that bottom log, when you enter the door, was virtually gone. Has that been replaced yet?
I don't think so.
It was in horrible shape.
Are you talking about the one that goes all the way around the building?
The one in the front where you go into the school building.
Threshold.
The threshold or
Yeah.
the log? I'll have to look at that. I tend to be looking up more than down, I guess, when I open the door, so
You look, make sure. no
to make sure
snakes up
that
there.
the
Or-
shingles aren't gonna fall off. I'll check.
Yeah,
That's
that's a
yeah.
major part of the foundation. the
Exactly. And
structure.
we did just have, the State Historic Preservation Office came and did a field trip to Person County. By the way, they are all fans now, of Person County. That was fabulous. And, I am working to get a representative from their office to come do a full assessment of the museum. That way they can tell us from a preservation perspective what the priorities are, and then Ray and I can focus on what the safety priorities are. 'Cause there's a lot of them.
And you mentioned earlier about you can't cover over the existing original wood with vinyl because it takes away from the historical
Correct.
value of.
Correct.
So, yeah, it's
We have to use restoration
that's some really old
principles.
buildings
Yeah, when we're restoring, we have to go restoration, not replacement.
there. Right, and that allows for the grant money to come.
Correct. And there is money out there, it's just a process, and there are
Right,
certain things from a safety perspective that we can't wait on. Other things from a repair perspective, we can look to do, grant funding and matching. Sometimes they require matching though, just to put that bug in your ear.
Could I make a comment real quick, just to summarize? And here's some waters. For fiscal year '22, we had a budget, total budget for the museum of $47,000, and $37,000 was spent. For fiscal year '23, the total budget was $67,000, and just over $66,000 was expended. In the current fiscal year, we have a budget of $87,000, and so far $79,000 has been spent. So the request, for the upcoming year is the $87,000 again, and recommended is $67,000. So, welcome, to receive the board's direction as far as how much you'd like to include, for next year, and whether that falls into the special appropriations line item or the maintenance and repair line item, how you'd like to allocate that funding if you do want to increase beyond the recommended budget.
The maintenance amount is how much?
$30,000 is what's recommended, and that's again 11,000 towards lawn care and 19,000
It covers,
towards maintenance and repair.
yeah, covers that part. Then the other, was there 20?
The special
Did you
appropriation
recommend?
request was 40,000, and I've recommended 20,000 in the
Yeah.
budget.
I think both are good numbers. And still honor what we have committed ourselves to in the past agreements there, going forward. So I think those are good numbers. Any other comments or questions? Karen? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Come
all
see
you-
us anytime.
Appreciate all you do there.
Thank you, and thank you all.
And on another note, we're talking about history here, but you have on site the only electric vehicle charging station in the county.
We do, and that we're making history at the museum day by day.
Yeah, okay.
How does that work? I mean, if I had an electric car, do I just pull up and plug in for free?
We don't manage the charging station. That's through
So you do
the
have to pay
county.
that?
I don't
No.
think so.
Really?
I don't.
It's, the county pays for the electricity and the maintenance of the station. We have a service agreement
need
for
to
a
put
minimal amount.
Like a cash deposit system there so we could recoup our money maybe?
We could, we just would set up through, its ChargePoint is the system for that particular charging station, and the county can set a fee for the charging, but currently it is set at 0. It is free.
Anything else?
I'm fine.
Just call.
We're okay.
Thank you guys very much.
We can come back to this again. right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, finance will have a spreadsheet when it comes to adjustments to the recommended budget. We'll put that spreadsheet up on the screen, and then we'll type in any adjustments that y'all would like to make.
Great, thank you.
Okay, then the next one in order, I believe, is it EDC, PCBIC?
It's PCBIC.
PCBIC.
Yes.
I don't know the difference, so I'm not sure who the presenter would be. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Glad to be here. My name is Philip Allen. I am the president of PCBIC.
Preacher.
And on behalf of our Vice President, Scott McKinney, who will be presenting shortly, our entire PCBIC board and our PCBIC Budget Committee, we thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to provide more details relative to our budget request for PCBIC. I'm going to make a few observations, short observations, before I turn it over to Scott McKinney, who will give more detail with respect to the actual numbers in the budget request. So there's been a lot of talk over the past several months about PCBIC in this community. So what is PCBIC? What is PCBIC? It's the Person County Business and Industrial Center. The key words are business and industrial. PCBIC has partnered and supported the development of business and industry in Person County for over 30 years. We have also partnered and supported Person County and the Person County Economic Development Commission over the past 30 years. So the key word in that is partner. In our efforts to partner with industrial business in Person County over this period, this 30-year period, we have supported investment and creation of jobs in Person County. In addition to that, we have been a partner in the creation and/or support of these industries that have generated tremendous value and tax revenue. Tremendous value and tax revenue for Person County. A review of a short list of some of the largest taxpayers in Person County that have also been supported by PCBIC over the past 30 years. There has been tremendous tax revenue, and it's been substantial. In fact, that figure over the past year has been in excess of $9 million in tax revenue of the industries that we've supported over this period of time, either indirectly or directly. We have supported industry that has created jobs, investment, and tax base. In addition to that, PCBIC over the past 10 plus years has invested in the development of the mega park. And over this period, going back over 10 years, some of y'all may know the answer to this. How many different chairmen of the Board of Commissioners have we had over that period of time? Take a guess. 6. 6. We've had 3 different Economic Development Commission directors over this period of time. So there's been a broad support and many members in the community that have served on our board. So there's been consistent support and leadership throughout the community and throughout the Board of Commissioners, the Economic Development Directors, and our board for the mega park. Over this period of time for the mega park, we have provided board guidance and support to the project. All of the initial due diligence studies were done and paid for by PCBIC. They were done and paid for by PCBIC. They include the geotech, the environmental, the wetland delineation, the endangered species, the archaeological, and the vibration studies. I'm sure I've missed a few, but that's a nice list right there. We have paid all of the engineering fees, all of the engineering fees. The U.S. Army Corps permitting cost, the North Carolina site certification and renewal cost, the marketing cost, the option negotiation and fees. All of the option negotiations have been done, and all of the fee expense for that has been paid by PCBIC. All of the above expenses, again, have been paid by PCBI, and it appears that the total expense to PCBIC that we have paid over that period of time, based on a report provided by the treasurer, is over $960,000. $960,000. So as you can see, our contributions to Person County Economic Development Commission, the creation of jobs, the development of these industries, and the creation of tax base has been significant. We look forward to the continued partnership with Person County. We are a critical piece of the big picture, and we have a body of work that substantiates that. At this time, I will turn it over to our distinguished Vice President and in-house CPA, member of the Budget Committee, Scott McKinney.
Thank you, President Allen. I am Scott McKinney. I'm the Vice President for PCBIC, and happy to serve in that capacity. I'm going to provide you just a quick update and some insight into the proposed budget request that we submitted. I would preface the comments by saying that this is the first time PCBIC has really engaged in this process with the county in terms of coming with a formal budget request, and that is totally due to the fact that for years and years and years, PCBIC has been utilizing a pool of funds that had been donated and granted to them for supporting economic development in the area. So that's why this is new and might feel a little different and awkward, but just to get that behind us. The proposed budget includes an increase in our business park maintenance fees. We want that part of our work, which is important, to be self-sustaining, and so we are increasing those fees to the tenants of that park to make sure that that supports itself. All other expenses that were detailed in that budget request that was submitted to County Manager Kathy represent just the bare minimum necessary just to keep this nonprofit organization functioning, with the exception of one line item. There is a line item that's titled Legal/Project, and I want to dive into that just a moment to give you some insight. That is the one line item that kind of fails the county manager's test for having a very detailed plan of how that is intended to be spent. All those other details were provided for other line items. The Legal/Project line includes a placeholder amount of $50,000. The Budget Committee, which I was part of, several members of that, did not determine that amount based on known expenses that we will incur. Rather, it's the amount anticipated to be incurred for the county's benefit as existing economic development projects mature and entirely new projects that we haven't even dreamed of yet and that you haven't dreamed of yet spring to life in the next fiscal year. When I challenged the Budget Committee group about this, they wanted to be prepared to act as quickly as possible to support the county when needs arise and not have to come back before you and take up your time on a case-by-case basis with relatively small requests. They were pretty adamant about that. I challenged them pretty strongly. They felt not asking for something significant in that regard would actually be a disservice to all the history that President Allen talked about and would indicate a reluctance on the part of PCBIC to continue our partnership with Person County supporting economic development. And they certainly did not want to send that message because they've been your partner for decades. It is important to recognize and celebrate the fruitful, long-standing partnership between Person County and PCBIC. I appreciate your support, and to that end, I want to publicly acknowledge Chairman Powell, Commissioner Sims, and Commissioner Puryear. I don't know if you guys realize this, but the three of you have spent a significant amount of time serving on the PCBIC board during the last 2 decades. I went back through the last 20 years of Form 990s and got this information so someone can fact check me if they'd like. But at least one of you three served in 62% of those years, 13 of those years. So that's pretty incredible. I think the three of you have had the opportunity to understand completely what PCBIC is all about. In other years, other sitting commissioners have served in that capacity. So it's obvious, county commissioners have been deeply involved in this effort and supportive for decades, even longer than the 20 years that I examined. And also during that last 20 years, 51 individuals, including the three of you, provided collectively 259 years of service for the benefit of Person County citizens. That's pretty incredible. Some people have served for a long time, some people have just started serving, but that's an average tenure of 5 years. That's pretty incredible that we've been able to have that many people dedicated to the cause for so long. It's certainly something to celebrate. Thank you for considering this budget request, and I'll pitch it back to President Allen if he has any other comments, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Scott. Again, we thank you for the opportunity to meet before you, and we have addressed some of the things that have created some concern with regard to the gray area. We're making a lot of progress, and we feel like we're an important part of the economic development, recruitment and support of industry in Person County to continue what this particular 501c3 was created to do over 30 years ago. We thank you very much.
Questions, comments?
Thank you, Philip.
I do have one
Yeah.
question. What's park maintenance expenses?
Park maintenance expenses directly related to the business industrial center out there on
But
501.
what
we
entails, what is involved in the maintenance?
Primarily mowing.
Building?
We do not,
Structural?
no. There are tenants that own two of the properties.
Right.
You are in the process of buying one
Right.
of those. And the third one is leased for a solar facility. But PCBIC still owns portions of that and has to keep up the road, keep up the mowing.
So you're leasing the
Pay
solar
for-
panels?
There's a lease in place, long-term lease related to those solar panels. We do not own the solar panels.
Okay.
Chairman
Oh,
Paul.
Okay, okay,
You know, just also, because my company is out there,
right.
lights, you know, the maintenance on the
Street
lights
lights,
is out there.
yes.
Those have, periodically go out, they've been, slowly changing them over, but, that is one of the other
Is
things.
that
Well,
outside
some
contractors
utilities.
comes in to repair these, or is that Duke Energy or what?
I don't know who comes out. and
The
fixes
actual utility cost is in a separate line item. Street lighting costs are approximately $1,500 a year. And I do believe those are owned by Duke, so they would pay the repair costs. The park maintenance, as detailed in the budget package, says specifically, and this came from our treasurer, Dan Craig, who's served in that role in volunteer capacity for a long time. Expenses consist of grounds upkeep, mostly mowing, and expenses of repairing the banks of the road and the entrance to the park. Monthly mowing amounts to at least $500. Bank repairs and maintenance been estimated $4,500. PCPSC contribution maintenance $4,500. Our economic development director, almost every time we have a meeting of the Economic Development Commission, PCBIC, she lovingly chastises President Allen and I about our mowing habits. So I was feeling the pain of our history director about that. She routinely parades prospective prospects in that park as showing that as an example of what we can do in this community. And she wants us to put our best foot forward, so we probably mow a little bit more frequently than I personally would.
Who's a contractor that mows?
I do not know the name of the contractor, but we changed this spring. We went out for bid and did change, but it's a local company. But it's a new company this year.
And for clarity on the solar farm, there are no revenues to the county with that lease. County doesn't get anything out of that.
So it's just a contribution to Duke Energy.
Well, the county doesn't own the property either, to be clear.
So, but there's essentially no revenues there. And thank you for your submittal of this request for funding. I don't see anything related to projected revenues.
I'm not sure what the county manager is including in your budget package, but what was submitted to her includes an estimated $18,000 for industrial park revenues, the first line on that submission.
Do you have a breakdown of that, and $18,000? That's your projected.
That is the industrial park fees we intend to collect from the owners of.
Well, I'm just thinking about it from the standpoint of it being a nonprofit, and everything that President Allen mentioned there, we wholeheartedly agree with, and especially the mega park. This board, your board, everybody on board has supported that wholeheartedly for 10 years now. It's been the elephant, if not more than one elephant in the room, related to the expenditures of PCBIC. And that's where the money has gone. During that period of time, though, you mentioned the 20-year partnerships, and we've done that. I think we've moved hand in hand with that. But at the same time, that money came from clawback funds from the failure of two industrial entities in the county. excuse me, and that was forest protection and Eden that failed on one part. So that's where the money came from. I don't know, except the minor influx of funds during that period of time, 20, 30 years, has been very, very low. So you've survived and operated and able to fund all the items that you listed with promotion of the mega park. So again, I don't see the revenue income there to sustain you going forward without some change of direction and movement in a different direction as far as fundraising through a nonprofit and being a true nonprofit. Now, I being part of that board, I know the people in the room have all the brain power to do it, to make it happen, but it's not happening. And I've said that before.
If
so
I
it's
might,
nothing
since,
new.
if
Yes,
I might,
sir.
since you opened
Please.
that door and it has been a topic of public discussion, I'd be happy
Sure.
to
Absolutely.
entertain, because it would be interesting to the commissioners, I think, as a whole, the steps we're taking in response to criticisms that have been made about the relationship between PCBIC and the Person County Economic Development Commission. First of all, the Economic Development Commission is an advisory board that your body has established, and you have complete control of that, of course. At some point during the history of PCBIC, it morphed slightly from being a purely, truly independent nonprofit organization to one where this body attempted to have more influence directly over PCBIC. I don't know all the history of that. I'm not going to speculate, but that's when the gray areas started to develop. And that's also, if you'll go back and look at our official tax records, that's when all of a sudden county managers started appearing as directors of PCBIC and all of that. Prior to that date, that was not true. It was truly a nonprofit with citizens serving in that capacity as directors. Nevertheless, our board has reacted to those criticisms that have been brought up in the community and those concerns. And we've received those concerns directly from County Manager Kathy as well as our EDC Director, Brandy Lynch, because it's affecting their work. The last thing PCBIC board wants to do is hinder the work of economic development in the area. So we're all in complete agreement about that. We're all going the same direction. It is important for a nonprofit where there is a fiduciary responsibility for each member of that board to do things properly and in order. And since January, we have been discussing, first of all, we all acknowledge there's a gray area. What can we do about it? And we're taking steps to do that. Matter of fact, yesterday, I was supposed to pick up our documents related to PCBIC out of the EDC office. They were just not quite ready for me to do that yet. But we're starting out with the easier things, just physically making sure we're totally operating as separate entities. But I suspect that our board, they've had an initial look at some steps that we need to take in order to establish an independent, self-perpetuating board. I'm pretty confident that's going to happen later this year. It will have to be done in a orderly fashion and in a responsible way to fulfill their fiduciary responsibility. So I think that all of those issues related to the so-called gray areas will be, I predict, resolved by the end of 2024. So I hope you see that as a sign of good faith on our part that the board's being responsive. We want to eliminate those gray areas as much as anybody else.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you and thank President Allen and every member of your board for your tireless commitment to our community and for the future economic growth of this county. In my opinion, you have gone over and beyond what your volunteers. You're not compensated for this. You are volunteers. And I don't know too many volunteers that would get criticized as much as you would have, which you have been. But I personally want to thank you for your tireless commitment to Person County. And I, for one, I'm only one voice on this board, but I do feel that you, just on what you said, the whole history, everything you've said is absolutely correct. I've been here. I've seen it with my own eyes, where kind of an overreach from Person County government reaching into PCBIC. It's, for whatever reason, it's always been a political hot potato, and it is what it is. But thank you for continuing to be involved with it. And I'm very interested to see what new concepts you have to become more self-sufficient. But it's not going to happen overnight. And I would just ask, I do believe that your request for the 62,800 is warranted, in my opinion. And I will do my utmost to find that money in this budget. But I would just ask for a continued commitment towards what you said, and also just give us regular reports on your progress as you move on to become more self-sufficient on that.
Thank you, sir.
We pledge to keep you apprised and updated on all the progress that we made to eliminate those gray areas and to make PCBIC allow it to continue to be an asset in the economic development of Person County.
And I've made several suggestions as to changes. Some became irrelevant as we talked over the past few months, and that's good. Then some adjustments have been made there with some of the things that may be changing internally, which is a step in the right direction. It is, and look, being appreciative is the least, well, I would say it's a priority to, as Kyle has just said, for what you guys do. I encourage Scott to apply for that position. I work with President Allen to get him in that position. So I'm on board with all this. I don't have a problem with that. It is, I think this gray area is extremely important as we move forward. And again, we'll go back to the nonprofit structure. That's how it should be operating, and the efforts to maintain itself as a true nonprofit. That's where the focal point, in my opinion, needs to be. Now, this board is the appointing and the authoritative board, but this board really doesn't get into your business. I don't think we support it, but we don't get into the day-to-day operations and what you guys bring up in the way of recommendations. We don't meddle. I'll just use that term. So again, our expectations are certainly high to do all the things that were just mentioned and what you have mentioned going forward. But I think a key and very important step there for the future of PCBIC, EDC, and Person County economically would be a true, clear separation of EDC and PCBIC so that they are separate and apart, where when you adjourn the EDC, you take that hat off and you put on the PCBIC hat. So in doing that, there really is no true change of opinions or suggestions or recommendations or whatever the structure may be. It doesn't happen. You just change hats and you go on about your business. And again, I'm part of that, and I've seen it for years now. And what we want most is economic growth. That's the responsibility of this board, is to improve the tax base. And we're going to primarily do that through EDC, PCBIC going forward. So I think probably I've been a bull in a china shop with some comments there, and I believe in those comments structurally, and look forward to, as Kyle said too, going forward here now and taking a look at yourself internally. That's hard to say that, hey, we need to make a change here. We should be doing something differently there. Our focus is misguided, misdirected, whatever the issues may be. Take a true look at it and go forward with that. So as far as the funding amount for this year, that's to be determined and decided, but again, from a supportive and thank you point of view, it's 101%. I don't have a problem with that, but thank you both for coming.
I was just, when I'm sitting here looking at this, we just had a nonprofit in front of you, and then having you give your report. And we both have mentioned self-sufficient. So not only with the museum, but also with the PCBIC, we're saying we work for self-sufficiency. And so, and again, when we talk about revenues, I'm not sure that the library told us that what revenues they would be generating, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't hear a number.
The library or
I
the?
I'm sorry,
Okay.
library,
All right.
museum.
Okay. I don't know.
I didn't see it, but
Yeah.
I guess my question is that, again, we're looking at revenues from the PCBIC, and also, with the library. I keep on saying library, I'm sorry. Museum. And so, that was my only comment. I mean, they both need to be self-sufficient. They need to work towards that. And I think that's why when we sit here and we grant the funding that we grant, it is to help them to become self-sufficient, so.
And I would also say in this case, both nonprofits is intermingled with Person County government. With the museum, Person County government owns the property. We're responsible for the safety of those buildings to keep them up. And just in this case with PCBIC, back in '07, when we allocated roughly $750,000 from the Force Protection Clawback money, we entrusted PCBIC to handle that, and in good faith with using it towards economic projects that will ultimately benefit the future of Person County. So I see both of these nonprofits intermingled with Person County government on that.
Sure. Well, I don't say it's misused, and I didn't mean
No,
to.
that's not what I was implying, Mr. Chairman. No,
But it's the fact that it
it's the
happened.
history of it.
And during that time, there's been minimal revenues through PCBIC. And you mentioned the property now. PCBIC technically owns property that's not owned by the county.
That's true.
Is that- Yeah, okay. Yes, sir. Sure.
One other thing that might make you feel better about the move towards self-sufficiency, President Allen, in our most recent meeting where we were having great discussion about the path forward for PCBIC and addressing all those things we discussed earlier, we had some members of that body that were eager to start talking about fundraising. and the president had to kind of just get us in line just to say, okay, wait, we've got to do some other things first, or some other things are a higher priority before we start going down that route. But our folks are eager to do that and to discover ways to generate revenues outside of this body. But those things that are critically important that we do to eliminate the gray areas, the first critical areas, first just physically, I've got to get my hand on the post office box key from the Economic Development Director. I got to get our boxes of papers out of her office. We will do that this week. I pledge to you that's happening. It's just me and her coordinating that. Other two important things is we have to revise our bylaws to change it so that it can become a self-perpetuating independent board. So in essence, we have to step back what was done when the county became more involved in the past. So that's critically important. And then the third item is thoughtfully, and I would ask you to please send recommendations our way, thoughtfully develop a method for ensuring that the reconstituted initial board can do its job well, and that it is truly independent of the Economic Development Commission. And Chairman Powell has very thoughtfully shared personal opinions about the fact that no sitting commissioner should be on PCBIC, no staff member. You know, he's given us some very detailed suggestions and recommendations that we appreciate. So that's the other big item. Bylaw revisions is gonna take just a little bit of work, and then, developing that initial pool of people and determining, who will serve as, quote, the reconstituted board and how we will perpetuate it going forward. And I've already assembled, one of the reasons I was in the 990s yesterday, I wrote down every person that served on PCBIC in the last 20 years. Some of those people passed away, unfortunately. Some of them may no longer wish to serve, but that seems like a pretty good list to start with, right? People that already know about the work, appreciate the institution and the relationship with the county.
Well, I would say, I'm encouraged by your words there that you're discussing fundraising. It's the first time I've heard that in any of our meetings, all the time I've been on either or any of these boards. So I'm encouraged to hear that you see that and we move forward. It's past due, so I'm, again, not only encouraged but excited to hear those comments. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want y'all to know that we are very sincere and we're dedicated to the proposition that we will address these areas. It will be a process, and we have already begun that process to move forward. Trust us. We are a board of volunteers that, as I had mentioned before to this body, they serve in a noble manner. They serve in an unselfish manner. We are grateful for the support that y'all have provided to us. And just a couple of more quick observations. We are grateful for the PCBIC attorney that was in place at the time when the clawback agreement was structured with regard to force protection. It was one of our own local attorneys, Alan Hicks, and every contract that we have for the protection of the public body as well as a 501c3 needs to have a very strong clawback or reversionary or reverter clause in that for those protections. And I'll say this, we're grateful for that, and my last closing comments is we thank you for the opportunity to come back and have this special session. My wife's particularly thankful because yesterday was our anniversary, and I gave her the gift of leaving her yesterday afternoon to come back. So we are volunteers. We understand that, and we believe in taking an inventory, and where we can do better, we will promise and pledge to you that we will move in that direction.
Question.
Yes, sir.
One of you gentlemen mentioned you were waiting on a report. I think it was Scott mentioned that he was expecting it today or yesterday, but when you first started with this presentation.
I don't remember what that was about.
I don't know about a report.
Said something from the EDC. You went to the EDC or something, I thought.
Yeah. it was yeah.
That, I'm sorry if I confused you. Last Thursday or Friday, I went to the EDC office to try to retrieve all the PCBIC related items, including the PO box key, and that was not available for me to pick up. I said, okay, I'll come back Tuesday afternoon. Just people's schedules and things, that didn't work out, so I was not able to pick that up yesterday afternoon. But they know that I am eager to come and load up my van with our stuff. So I expect that will happen by the end of the day Friday.
Commissioner Palmer, that is in an effort to separate these
Yes, sir.
two,
Physically.
EDC with PCBIC.
We don't even want the EDC
That's
office
what
to
I was-
pick up our
that's what I
mail.
was
Yeah,
thinking,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's what I want to make sure.
Yes, sir. Sorry for the confusion.
Okay, well, I should have asked sooner.
No problem.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it very
Thank you.
much.
Okay, those are the only two.
Right, so we're now at the point to discuss adjustments to the recommended budget, and we have a spreadsheet that Tracy will be able to put on the screen, so you can track where we are with that.
All right.
All right, here's where the fun begins. Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask staff historically, there has been in the past some unanticipated revenues that may have been unanticipated that show up right at budget session. I just want to ask finance, is there any such unanticipated revenues such as EMS revenues or that are anticipated that could have gone up?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
Okay,
No.
okay.
And no debt coming to an end at this fiscal year.
No, we're not dropping off anything.
Right, okay.
Okay. Well, gentlemen, I'll start off. My goal here, and I'll tell you my objective, and this is, again, just my opinion. I'm not in favor of the 3-cent property tax rate increase. And also, I do support the 2 requests that we've heard before us today. So my goal, hopefully by the end of this budget work session, was to figure out a solution to reduce the proposed tax increase and fund these projects. With that being said, Russell, can you come up for a moment, please? Gentlemen, I had asked Russell, he's got the property tax rate at 97.5, and Russell, my understanding, our collection tax rate has been above 98% for several years.
That's correct, yes, sir.
And we're even at I believe you said we're even at 99 right now
That's correct.
on that. So my understanding, for every 0.5%, if we increased it to 80% collection tax rate, that would generate an additional $187,229 in revenue.
187,729 to go from 97.5 to a 98% collection rate.
Okay, 187.
187,729. And finance may want to check behind me. I'm using a tax base of 5,196,650 and using the 7225 to get that number. So basically, every 1% change in collection rate will give you 375,000.
Every 1%.
Every 1%, so half that 187. One of the issues you run into and why you want to be conservative with your collection rate, which we talked about in the past, Mr. Commissioner Pereira, is anytime you have a large bankruptcy, it can affect your collection rate. And historically, we haven't had a lot of problem with that. I think it was 1999. Toltex was a big bankruptcy that got us into the 97% collection rate range. And that was a Chapter 13, which is a long, drawn-out, 4 or 5 year process. The second largest bankruptcy that comes to mind is one we had in 2021, the 2021 tax year, your fiscal year 2022, and that dropped us to a 98.63. So that's one of our safety nets to make sure that we stay above. You get a nasty letter from the state if you budget too much. You can't budget for more than you experienced the previous year. And my second safety net, we talk about the budget retreat, is being conservative on my levy estimates, the assessment estimates, because we get the state appraised stuff late September. So we don't know what 20% of our tax base is going to look like until September 1 at the earliest. So we have to be conservative there. So sometimes we have extra money, but we don't know about it after the budget's already adopted.
Russell, you spoke at our last meeting about the revaluation. And in our budget meetings that we had with the county manager, I believe it was said that on the low end amount, you're at least a 30% overall increase in the tax base. Is that correct?
30% increase in the real property, not overall tax base.
Okay.
Because your business equipment, your motor vehicles, your state appraised are reappraised every year.
real
So
property.
only on the real property, and real property runs around $3 billion of your $5 billion base, to give you some numbers to look at.
Okay.
So 30% of the $3 billion, not the $5 billion,
Okay, all right.
if that's helpful.
That makes sense, okay. And so, but you feel, I know this is this year's budget.
Yes, sir.
But we know that's coming down the pipe next year. But could it be higher than 30%?
It definitely could be, yes. So the one thing we have to do, we have to set the market as it is January 1st of 2025. And I'm waiting for the sky to fall, thinking the real estate market is in a bubble and it's gonna go down. I see no signs of that. The increase is slowing. The days on market is slowed down, so things are staying on the market longer. We don't have bidding wars, people lined up trying to buy property across the state, not necessarily Person County. So I think the value we have today is pretty much gonna be held in place to January 1, and probably quite a few months after that.
Absolutely. And one thing with the 3-cent property tax rate increase proposed in this year's budget, if by chance that would be approved next year when we try to lower the rate towards a more revenue neutral approach, that 3 cents this year would not count towards that revenue neutral because it was implemented this year before next year.
Actually, just opposite. The revenue that you would have gotten next year if you hadn't done a reappraisal compared to the budget you're going to adopt today. So if you raise the tax rate 3 cents for this year's budget, revenue neutral would be trying to replace the revenue from this year's budget. So your revenue neutral would be stated higher if you had an increase this year. If I had to throw a number out there, what revenue neutral, it would probably, if you raise it 3 cents, your revenue neutral rate next year is going to probably be 3 cents higher because you're trying to replace this year's revenues. It's hard. You can't really even estimate revenue neutral
Until it happens.
Until next year
Yes,
this time.
yes, and so that, I just wanted to address a couple of those questions with
Pretty good.
that. I've done enough talking for right now. Does anyone want to chime in?
The budget is based on a tax collection of 97?
97 and a half,
Yeah,
97.5.
yeah.
We were 97
And-
until like 5 years ago, and we did increase that to
And your
97 and a half.
outstanding work of collection is gonna put you in the 99 percentile.
Today, we're 97.13.
That's today,
That's
but
today, and we have another almost 30 days to get that up a little higher. Last year was our best collection rate ever, 99 and a half.
yeah, well,
And again, in 21, we ended up at 98.63. And it's just a safety net to make sure if you have a major
Sure.
bankruptcy that we have to include in our collection rate that we
on the
can't collect.
conservative side, it should be approached that way.
Yes.
And I think there's been a couple of 3 concerns about, some tax payments that were in arrears, we seem to be coming along.
You're aware of a couple of them, but there's always 100 tax payment plans
Well,
we're
some of
working on.
those are down.
We have 3 big ones, one that you're aware of, but there's 2 other large ones that,
Yeah.
one of them is dragging their feet more than I wish they would, but the 2 are playing along like they should.
Yeah, and I think that's good, and I have, have great hope and, faith that they'll do the right thing and make those payments on time.
And 2 of the things that will affect your budget next year, was we have heard GKN will be leaving the
That was
county
my
sometime. We're
question.
taxing that this year, as they're January 1. But I do anticipate about $35 to $38 million of equipment being gone for next year's budget.
Which would equate to,
$300,000.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
roughly, don't hold me to that, but around
Well,
$300,000 loss. The building will still be there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have the Mariah Energy Center that should be coming on board to get some tax base. I don't have a clue how much will be there January 1st of 25. And then, of course, Duke Progress with them talking about adding on the natural gas. Maybe not next year, but sometime in the near future, we should see an increase in valuation there. So that's some other moving parts that I'm aware of, and I'm sure there's many others out there that I'm not aware of.
Russell, by comparison of the new projects at HYCO, project 2 boilers versus 4 or 5 counting Mayo, what is the difference in revenue for taxes in regards? Don't have a clue, do you?
First off, the county tax office does not appraise any of that property. That's done by the state. And it's done by what they call the income approach. So and the state doesn't get those numbers, they can start working on them until May. That's the reason we don't get into September. But what could happen is, you know, we'll talk about Duke Progress just because that's the big one. If they have a good year because it was a cold winter or a hot summer, their income is up. So we may see an increase in value because their income is up. On the other side of that, our piece of the pie, so their total income nationwide, statewide, down to Person County, is based on their number of invested dollars in that community. So if they invest somewhere else and they have a good year, we could still have a lower number. During the construction of a new plant, I would anticipate that we would have new investment numbers, so our piece of the pie is getting larger. We have the old equipment that we're still taxing, and we have the new equipment, new investment that we are including in our piece of the pie. So I do think as they start construction, we'll see increases for many years.
Right.
I think that's a 6 or 7 year project. But I don't appraise that, and I reach out to state every year, and they always say, budget flat or slightly down, because we don't know. And I've never gotten a better answer than that, and I ask every year.
To give you a snide answer, their revenue ought to already be up, because they're killing me on my electric bill.
And at the same time, they're doing a lot of money in investment on these new plants, so I don't understand the whole puzzle. It's
Yeah.
way beyond what I can comprehend, so it's a big puzzle.
I was just curious
Yeah.
as to the comparison between now versus what's coming.
My gut feeling is gonna go way up. And the new plants are newer, new investment, more expensive.
Right. Okay.
Their tax value is between $800 and $900 million for both plants and all their property.
That's per plant.
No, total.
So,
Yeah, the Hall State Appraised is just under 900, and Duke being the biggest player of that in 850 range, I've had to guess. So they write us a check for $6.7 million for county taxes annually.
Well, we continue to work hard with Duke Energy, for Person County to be, a focal point of their future generation. And in fact, the Utilities Commission will be here next Thursday, and, for a public hearing related to, next steps for constructing 2 plants that they've already said here. And the dollar values are way beyond anything that exists now.
is that what we got a letter in the mail about?
I don't think Duke and
Superior
Mariah is gonna
Court
make a
Room?
big difference in this
Yeah.
year's budget.
Superior Court Room?
Yeah.
Now,
Okay.
do we have to sign up to go to that?
No, it's public,
Okay.
but, the speakers will be limited, I think.
Okay.
Is that right?
I'm not
I'm
sure
not
what
sure
their
either.
process is for
But-
speakers.
But anyway, Person County will be represented, as we go forward with that, but that's future. Can't
Right.
spend that money yet, can we, Russell?
I'm sorry.
Can't spend that money yet.
Not yet, we don't, I do think it's coming, but,
I do too.
I don't think it's gonna help us balance this year's budget.
No, not at all.
And
Okay.
if it does, it'll be a windfall that we didn't anticipate, that we'll see September 1.
Right.
All right. Did he answer?
Yes, yes,
your
sir. Thank you
questions?
for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
All right.
Commissioner Sims, I see you had a question about the revenue with the museum, about,
Yeah, I just didn't know if they had something down.
I see her
Okay.
back. Yes, come on up.
Sorry, I was down talking to Cooperative Extension. You had a question
Well,
about?
I was just wondering about generating revenue. I didn't see a number, if you had a projection of
Of-
what revenue that you would be generating this year.
Our goal is 50,000.
Okay.
Our revenue generating sources are our annual fund, and we are about a quarter. It just went out May 23rd. We're about a quarter there. We got a very nice sizable donation from an anonymous donor, so that was exciting. And our anticipated revenue from our events, and this is off the top of my head, so keep that in mind, is between 2,500 to 5,000.
Okay.
So those are and then of course, other grants that we're gonna go for. I just have to be careful because there's only one staff member, and there's a lot of requirements when you're administering grants, so I can't have tons at the same time. I have to make sure I've got the capacity, but, that is the other avenue. And we're hoping to sit down soon with a few organizations that have been mentioned here that I won't say the actual names, but see if we can get some corporate sponsorships going, and from other local businesses as well.
Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want me to stay just in
If you
case?
want to, feel
Okay.
free to. Mr. Chairman, got a question for finance. Whose phone is ringing?
Mine's out
They
there.
answered it.
Can I get a dollar amount from fund balance over the 30% threshold? You know, over 30% typically goes towards capital improvement. Can I get a dollar amount over that would be, would come from fund balance towards the capital improvement past that, once it's over 30%?
Or that would be, I don't know, that depends on what we recognize in fund balance this year. I can figure it on what we had in the reserves as of the end of fiscal year 23.
Okay,
Okay, that'll take me a minute.
take your time.
And just to clarify, it is over 25%
25.
that we
25, I'm sorry,
transfer to the capital
25.
investment fund.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of moving parts to that, so
I
it is
understand.
difficult to estimate, but we can
So,
see.
and let me, so you want to know how much we would,
Transfer over,
transfer over the 25%
Yes, ma'am.
that we would recognize. And that's basically what we transferred this year, which was over 7 million.
I think you're asking though, what we would project at the end of fiscal year 24, so
Correct.
when we finish out this month, when we conclude the audit process, what we would be projecting to transfer.
Right.
And I
I
know,
wouldn't be able to give you, I'm.
would it be over, would it be at least $1.7 million?
Honestly, I'm not sure
That's
what
not
we're
part of
going to
what you
get
already
over, I'm not sure we're going to exceed
factored in.
25% this year. Revenues have slowed to the point where, I'm concerned that we will even meet that threshold. So I'm not sure that we will have anything to transfer this year. If we do, it's not going to be near what we transferred this year, because revenues did not start, pulling back until this fiscal year.
and when Amy had initially projected, year-end fund balance at the time of the budget retreat, there was a rough projection of ending the year at the 30% mark.
It was.
But now some things have changed since that time. And now we are, with the current conditions as far as revenue that's coming in, we can't be certain that it's gonna be at the 25%. I mean, that is certainly our goal. We're trying to maintain it at 25% or above. But there are many unknowns.
Sales
in
tax
finishing out the
pulled
year.
back quite a bit. I mean, it was a very, it was a very dramatic pullback. And then in addition to that, I think the state has had their own issues with, staffing, because we've had a lot of delays in intergovernmental revenues. And that's also contributing to, when I look at fund balance, I have some concerns about where we're gonna land at the end of this year. So I'm just not able to give you that projection. I'm not anywhere close to that, because we collect revenues all the way up through, August, and sales tax in September. So there's so many moving parts, I'm just not able to tell you, but I can tell you that compared to last year, our revenues have really pulled back.
And we constructed the budget with an approach to, with our goal to be able to maintain that 25% fund balance going into next year. But we may not have much in excess of that to transfer.
Okay. Next, we're putting something on the board here.
Well, can we all
Yeah.
agree to start off to increase the collection rate to 98%, which would equivalent to 187,729?
I think that's safe,
I think it's second.
yeah.
Okay. So-
And
Yeah.
could I just to clarify a couple of implications of doing that? So as you know, we do very much estimate that conservatively. So over the years, that has helped us in the year with a larger fund balance, so we can transfer funding into our capital investment fund. So that is one benefit of that conservative estimate, so we could, most often, if revenues come in as expected, that contributes to a larger fund balance and future funding for capital. And then, as Russell has pointed out, we also take that approach just in case there is something like a large bankruptcy. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of what the implications are with raising it.
Can I get a total dollar figure of total fund balance for the county
As of right now,
as of right now, please?
sure. That's gonna take me a minute, cause I
Take your
have to
time.
do it across funds.
Take your time.
We got all day.
Need a bathroom break?
Well, we can recess if you need it. We've been here close to 2 hours, so if you.
Well, we'll do that. We'll give them
Recess.
time. We'll take a
Fine.
5-minute break.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm in.
So, can I ask, always gonna ask my question
Sure.
with the sheriff's department. It's on like page 70, if you wanna look at
Okay.
it. And I think this is, my question is a one-time cost, but I see where jail provisions increased 272%,
Right,
which is a $49,000 increase.
right.
So, and I think that is for bedding, if I'm not mistaken, that's what, it was for
Yes,
the, boxes and mattresses for the jail, right?
correct.
So would that be a one-time expenditure?
I mean, one time, as in it's not year by year, it's replaced as needed, and this year is the needed replacement, kind of across the board. And they said that it is a critical need.
So
when
we
did
probably
explore
wouldn't
that.
see that next year, I
Right.
would think, right?
Right.
Because again, they got, okay.
Yes,
When I see something that's that high in percentage increase, I wanted to
sure.
see what was going on with that. And I know we went over this previous with you, when we had our meeting with you, but I just wanted to verify that's just a one-time, cost.
I had that marked on my sheet too. Same page, same item.
Can we get the spreadsheet back up?
If we can get IT to please put the spreadsheet back up.
He's- yeah.
So, this is not official, this is just my opinion, I'm doing this to get a number here. If you put the expenditures, the 20,000 for the museum and the 62,800 for PCBIC. Okay,
It would be adding,
It would be-
Just one second.
This would be adding,
and it would be 42,800, because that's 20, and then 42,800 for PCBIC, because there's already 20,000.
20,000 allocated
Yes.
for it, okay. And going back to the museum, with Ray brought up some questions regarding the expense among maintaining the facilities on the property. I think it'd be prudent for him to have a further discussion with the museum to come up with a more concrete number, and later on in the year, we can look at addressing that issue in the future, not here at this work session. Okay, last thing is, given that the 1 penny is 552,650, 3 times 3, that would be 1,657,950. Would that be correct?
That changed slightly when you change the collection rate.
Okay,
Ever so slightly.
all right, so,
I don't know if I can calculate that, it's not enough to even matter, but.
Okay.
Ever so
Okay.
slightly. Maybe, might change $4,000 or $5,000.
Okay.
May I make a note? The PCBIC is budgeted in the Economic Catalyst Fund, so that
oh, yeah, you're right, yeah, you got it.
would not be
That's right.
on the general fund.
Right.
If that is the board's desire to fund that through the
this is,
Economic
this is
Catalyst
just my,
Fund,
this is not the
Right.
board's, this is just for me to look at the numbers.
then that would be funded, it could be funded with a fund balance allocation within the Economic Catalyst Fund,
Right, it
potentially.
wouldn't be, it doesn't have to affect the general fund.
All right, so so you're saying the 42,800 will just come out of the catalyst, which is already budgeted.
We could increase the fund balance
You
allocation
can
within
either
the
increase
economic,
Yeah, you can either increase the fund balance appropriation in the economic catalyst fund, or, to cover that, or you can even reduce the industrial recruitment expenditure line. That's kind of your, plug figure in that fund.
All right, Amy, here's what I'm looking at doing. My suggestion here, given next year, based on Rusto's conservative estimates on at least a minimum of 30% of real property increase, I'm proposing that we take the 3-cent tax rate increase of $1,657,950 from the general fund, along with the 20,000 for the museum, and we can talk about how we want to allocate the money from the economic catalyst for PCBIC after that.
So is that that's where you are right now?
Yes, I mean, mm-hmm.
So when
We
you-
can go ahead, I think on the revenue side probably, and put, for now, 42,800.
So when you, and I'm just trying to clarify the statement, the last statement, you said, you would want to take it from the general fund. Do you mean?
Take,
What do you mean by that? The 3 cents?
the 3 cents, the $1,657,955, pull that number from the general fund to balance the
The
budget.
fund balance, is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Yes.
Increase the fund balance allocation to balance it.
Yes.
So, and so just,
I know what
again, yeah, the
I know-
implication, it's the
trust
same
me,
as
I
the,
know, but,
right, so.
Next year, you're gonna have a tremendous increase. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman, you got something on your mind.
Well, we have to deal with what we know today. We don't know
Understand.
next year. So, that's what we're doing right
I
now.
understand.
Is dealing with facts, figures, and numbers based on what we know. Tomorrow's an unknown, next year's an unknown. So, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Um,
I'm just trying to avoid a tax rate increase
Well,
burden
I
to
think
the
pretty
residents.
much, we have all said that. I don't think it's a debatable point. I mean, it's debatable, but I think we're all on the same page there with community input and people that I've talked to. They've approached me numerous times saying simply, we don't need a tax increase,
Mhm.
which is,
I mean, Mr. Chairman, I fully understand what my proposal means of using funds, using fund balance for reoccurring expenditures. I fully understand that, and I have looked through the budget, and, we've asked questions here today, and I've gone to past county commissioners who are very familiar with the budget, asking them about this suggestion, and, I would not be doing it if I did not believe that it would be appropriate.
well, you're doing your job.
Yes, sir.
That's what we all should be doing. And, okay, what's the next one? We're okay with the museum part?
That's included in it, correct?
And that
Okay.
was 20 is your recommendation.
Right, and so that's adding the other 20,000 that was requested for the special appropriation by the museum.
And going back to PCBIC, I think it would, you've got a commitment that they are going to make progress towards becoming self-sufficient. I think it would be important to have some type of scheduled updates given to the board on
Well,
the progress that they're making
I
as
would-
well.
I think you're right. Scheduled updates is one thing, but I think we need to make very clear there. See, this board is the appointing board. So we're the accountable board,
Mm-hmm.
in a sense. So, and I think they recognize that fact.
Mm-hmm.
But, so some regular correspondence and feedback from them as to what
Absolutely.
they're doing. Well, I would like to ensure that if we go this route
Mhm.
of funding, and this is a chunk to a nonprofit now. Nonprofit is a nonprofit. They should be self-sustaining and supportive. So I would say that we need to ensure that they're gonna separate themselves, EDC and PCBIC. So that no member from the boards would sit on both boards.
Absolutely, and,
Total
and
separation.
it sounded like they were working on changing the bylaws.
Well, I mean,
for that.
oh yeah, that's a given, they're gonna
Mhm.
have to do that, but to be included in those changes, I think they need to, hear what we're saying here.
I think they're
What
hearing
their
it.
expectations are, and that would be a total separation between the two.
Mhm.
Now, do we wanna continue having two separate boards? Or do we want to let EDC function as it maybe should? We're beginning to get to that point where the director still reports to the manager, whomever those two people are.
And I think that's a very valid question to raise. However, I think that's a policy question but not directly related to the budget. And I think that should be, I mean, we're talking about the idea, the concepts of what we want, the future of EDC and PCBIC. And I welcome that conversation. And if we want to have that discussion at a regular at the next regular commissioner meeting, I would welcome
You
that
know,
too.
we've talked about that, but it doesn't seem to gain any traction. That's why I'm saying, here, how much clearer can you be in your expectations than what you say about your budget?
Yeah.
And
I
then-
think I think we're on the same page, Scott and Philip and us, based on what they
Okay.
told us today, and it's gonna be a process.
Well, we can, yeah, I know that. And as I've said previously, I had the curse of being on all three boards. And I've seen this now for years. And, maybe we're getting to the point, gain some traction to make some progress in separating those two and let them operate with more transparency to the public and what's going on within their realm. And where we don't intersect in the wrong way, get to the intersection at the same time and crash that we've had in the past. So, okay, if we, and we'll just separate it from the budget here. But I would like to see that conversation take place soon,
Absolutely.
very soon.
And if,
Next meeting.
and
wouldn't be
Mr.
too early.
Mr. Chairman, if you feel the need to add it as an agenda item,
We'll-
I would
we'll
welcome
talk
that
about
too.
it. We'll talk about it over here.
Okay?
Now, the amount, my major concern there are legal fees, that we don't know where that's going. It does seem to continue, and there's one project in particular that's, consuming their time and the money there. That seems to be ongoing. I think the last report, there was $1,200-1,300 in legal fees. And I think the majority of that went to one project. And so I'm a little bit concerned about that amount of money going forward with unknowns, because they're projecting the potential of that amount of money that they put in there at 50,000, I believe.
Legal/project.
Yes. So, I don't know. Are you supporting that
I'm
bottom
su-
line request?
I'm supporting the 42,800 because 20's already been allocated in the current budget.
Okay, that 20 then is allocated for what purpose?
Well,
Defined purpose?
The
or just-
20 was included as a starting point for discussion with the board as far as your expectations for the amount of funding and how it would be used in the new year, and any, any direction you wanted to provide regarding how PCBIC is structured going forward, or, emphasizing the need to have those continuing conversations. That was to promote discussion, in this setting once you received their detailed request. We will do a written agreement with PCBIC for this funding, which will stipulate how it will be used, how they'll report back to the county, ensuring it's for a public purpose, and with a provision to return any unused funds.
Well, with the unknown, with the legal and projects, I'd like to see that number reduced to 25,000. So we take,
We're probably gonna have to have a vote on that one.
I agree.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Shoot.
All right.
Well, isn't that part what we're doing right here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're gonna have to vote at the end of the day, anyhow.
Yeah.
All right, so,
Yeah.
Oh, are we gonna be still talking about PCBIC or?
well,
I'm okay. No, that's my.
okay, that's my suggestion is to fully fund it, so, Mr. Chairman, would you like to call for a vote on that, or?
Do we, at this point, do we need to do that? I'm fine with it, if you will.
I mean, you may want to vote on that particular, if there doesn't seem to be consensus on that
Okay,
particular
that's
item, so
fine.
we can go
All
ahead
right.
and get the spreadsheet where
All
you
right.
want it to be before a final vote.
Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor, and that motion would be, one, to fully fund. I'm recommending 25 less than that 62,800. So, okay. So your motion then is to,
For the 42,
and
I haven't made the motion yet, I will make the motion
All right.
for 42,800 for PCBIC.
okay, and I'll make a substitute motion for 25 less than the 42.
Okay,
So we got two motions on the floor, and it doesn't matter which we do first.
well, substitute typically goes first.
All right, all right. All in favor of substitute motion, as stated, 25 less than the requested amount, say aye. And that's aye. Any opposed?
No,
All right. That's
so there's no
okay.
reason to have a motion
That's all right.
on that.
Agreed, all right. Mr. Sims?
Yeah, I have a question. This is on page 80 with the EMS. And there's a 489% increase, and that's in contract services. And I was trying to just get a little understanding on why that number is so high.
Sure, and our Emergency Services Director, Tom Schwallenberg, is here and can answer questions specific to that item. That is a new program to lease medical, the patient movement equipment like the stretchers and the stair chairs, as well as some other devices which Tom could go into more detail about. That is a large increase in contract services to fund that lease agreement. What that will do is it will ensure that our equipment is up to date. Much of it is end of life now and will need to be replaced. So this is covering replacement cost. And then you'll see that there were some other line items within the budget that were reduced as a result of pulling out some of the maintenance contracts that we currently have associated with the equipment and moving those into the line item along with the lease agreement.
So would this be an ongoing,
It would be an ongoing.
from here on
yes,
out, this is what the budget will be?
as long as we continue that lease program. So what it does is it replaces our equipment in year one, and then as we continue to lease it, it replaces it again in year 5 with up-to-date equipment. So it maintains our equipment, the service agreements come along with that. It ensures that we have safe equipment, for providing services to those that we serve. It enables our employees to do their jobs well with the proper equipment that's integrated.
So is that you mentioned 5 years. Is this a contract that could be gotten out of in year 1, 2, 3, 4?
Let's let
Or is it
Tom
perpetual?
speak to the provisions, the specific provisions of the program.
Are we locked in? I mean, I don't know what we're,
Good morning, Commissioners. So it's a 10-year program. So that's the length
So
of the
you're locked
program.
in
It's a
10
10-year
years.
program. So let me sort of explain to you the need. So basically, the program is entitled ALS 360. It's through our biomedical vendor, Stryker Medical Systems. And basically what this is it's a replacement program for our current transport equipment and biomedical equipment. So currently the FDA, which regulates our equipment, basically says that our equipment's good for 7 years. At the end of that 7 years, it drops off of its value service life. So this has been a concern of mine since I came here, and basically what I'm trying to do is kind of fix sort of a long-standing issue. So basically, at the end of that 7 years, if we have a failure of a piece of patient transportation equipment, the FDA can basically say, it's on you, it's not our or the manufacturer can say, it's on you because you've exceeded the service life of that piece of equipment. So 7 years is what the FDA says service life is of this piece of equipment. So just to give you an example, our stair chairs, which is a device we use to move patients who are in a seated position, we use it to move them upstairs, downstairs, that kind of stuff. Currently in our fleet, we have a stair chair that's 21 years old, a stair chair that's 20 years old, and 4 stair chairs that are 12 years old. So they have all exceeded their service life. Our stretchers currently, we have 1 stretcher that is 8 years old. The remaining stretchers that we have are 7 years old and 1 stretcher that's 6 years old. So again, all of those devices except for 1 have exceeded their service life. Our power load systems, currently, all of our power load systems are in the 6 to 5 year, 7, 6, and 5 year range. So again, these devices are going to have to be replaced, or we incur the risk of if we have a catastrophic injury to a provider or a catastrophic injury to a patient because one of these devices fail, then we incur that risk and we incur that liability. So we don't really have a choice but to replace these.
This cost is for a lease agreement contract.
Yes, sir.
So what if we went out and bought these on our own individually, what would the cost be versus having, you got one 8 years, if we go and replace it, buy a new one, we have one 7 years, we buy a new one, that 2 or 3 of them. Has that been looked at and what that costs?
Sure, so ultimately your cost is gonna be higher because what you're gonna end up doing at that point is replacing that item individually. So as Manager Kathy said, what you noticed in the budget is you noticed a bunch of deductions in the budget because we're able to now take all of our maintenance programs and reduce it into one maintenance program. Every time we buy a piece of equipment individually like that, we also end up incurring a new maintenance fee as well. So ultimately, your total costs end up being higher because every time we do this, we also incur new maintenance plans. Currently, right now in the budget, we're maintaining 4 maintenance plans for all of the same pieces of equipment, and what this program does is allow us to reduce everything into one single maintenance plan.
Was there another plan besides the 10-year, or was that?
No,
what,
that's-
They had no other plan
No,
besides that,
that's
just doing
the
it
plan.
10
Yes, sir.
years?
Yes, sir. And that's just the patient movement equipment. That doesn't include the actual biomedical equipment, which is basically our cardiac monitors. So all of our cardiac monitors are at basically 7 years of life. The FDA doesn't have that same 7-year standard for those, but the industry standard is 7 to 10 years is basically the life of those machines. So basically our monitors that we have are basically at the end of their generation. So there is a new monitor that's on the market. So just to give you a concept of what that is, we pay about $40,000 for a cardiac monitor. Currently is what we pay. The new monitors are $70,000. That's what the new monitors are. So about a $30,000 increase for these monitors. Now, those monitors were released this spring. I would not go out and buy those monitors today. To be honest with you, they need to work the bugs out of them before I would go out and buy these monitors. Mm-hmm. What this program allows us to do is lock in our prices today when we sign the agreement. So if we're paying $40,000 for monitors today, As Ms. Kathy mentioned, when we look at that 5-year mark, I can then replace with the new monitors, which are called LP35s, I can replace those at that $40,000 mark versus paying $70,000, which is what would be the value 5 years from now when I need to replace those monitors. So by locking into this price now, into this 10-year program, I'm basically saving $30,000 per monitor at 10 monitors.
At the end of 10 years,
At the end of 10 years, we have an option. We either own it, or we basically can move into a new thing.
would we own anything at the end of 10
Right.
years?
The advantage to this program is at that 3 to 5 year mark that Ms. Kathy just mentioned, is we get all new equipment. We get to decide at year 3, year 4, year 5 when we want to do that. But at that point, we get to replace all of that equipment again. So when we sign the contract, we get all new equipment. Everything's replaced brand new. At that year 3, 4, 5 mark, at the point that we decide, we get to replace all of that equipment again. So we're not now faced where we are today with being at that 7-year mark and having to replace it. The reason I recommended this to the manager, and this is something we worked on for about 2 years, is the reason I recommended it is by putting it in the operating budget, what we avoid is these spikes in the capital improvement budget of me having to come back here every other year saying, I need $1 million for this, I need $600,000 for this. And by doing it this way, it's in the operating budget and it's a planned expense that we can plan for every year.
Do you know of any or other EMS facilities using the same
In
program?
North Carolina, there's about 15 that I'm aware of.
15?
Yes, sir. This is a relatively new program. It's been around for about 2 years.
I haven't seen the contract, but I'm pretty sure if we're not happy with it somewhere, if there's some,
Yes, sir.
they're not providing what they said they would provide with us, there is an out of that contract,
sir,
I would
there is.
hope. Okay.
And I just want to give you just a real-life example. So about 6 months ago, we had a call where, again, we have load systems in our ambulances, right? That basically we load the stretcher into the load system. We were on a call. We had a critical patient. We're loading the patient into the ambulance. The load system failed. We had to sit there and wait for another ambulance to come to the scene to pick up that patient because we couldn't load the patient in that ambulance. Fortunately, the patient did not have a bad outcome. We were able to make things work out, but that's the liability that we could incur if our equipment doesn't work properly. And again, just trying to fix a problem that's existed, and we need to get the problem fixed.
I did have one question. I think you just answered it. Does each transport vehicle carry each device that we are talking about?
Yes, sir.
And so if they only have one per vehicle,
Yes, sir.
so if that fails, then if we got the rest of the vehicles out on service calls,
That's
we're
correct.
fine.
Yes, sir, we are.
But having it up to date and through the lease program, you would have more modern and reliable,
Correct. And
supposedly more reliable equipment.
correct, but by doing that, we also meet the regulation. So
Okay,
if something
right,
happens,
right.
that reduces our liability
Covers us.
significantly.
Right.
Right now, we're at risk.
We're scared on thin ice.
The department request there was $790, and your recommendation is $558.
Right, so the original request, kind of as a plug figure, was the contract with all the bells and whistles. So we cut back on the lease agreement, on what we would be getting. There were, for example, this also includes AED replacements for all of the county buildings. So our AEDs are outdated. The original proposal included extras, and we cut back on it. So that's why the recommendation is lower. And I will note that the increase related to the ALS 360 program within the emergency medical services contract services line item is $366,000 of that total increase. There are some other things included in that line item that are not related to the lease agreement. So, for example, the contract for our decedent transport, and I was looking to see what else is in there. I don't remember off the top of my head.
We have other maintenance and other contracts that are just related to our service. All of those contracts have gone up. they just have. So that's figured into that figure as well. She mentioned the AEDs in the county buildings. All of our AEDs, which were originally, I think we received most of those on a grant. That was before my time here. They're all at the 10-year mark. Most of those AEDs are only good for about 7 years. We've had 2 AEDs fail in the past year. They just need to be replaced. That's where we are at this point.
Anything
Good,
else, sir?
thank you, Tom, appreciate it. Thank you, so much more clarification on
Yes,
where
sir.
it's coming from. You answer those questions, so thank you.
All right, thanks, gentlemen.
Okay, so,
I wanted to mention, we found an error in that house. I thought that figure sounded a little bit far off on the fund balance when we went back and looked at our math, and we had an issue there. The fiscal year 23's ending fund balance, through the end of May was $45,319,725.36. That's a difference of, that's a drop of 10.9 million, not 64. I think is what I said.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a significant drop, but not to
Could
that.
you give me that figure one more time?
Sure, and she's actually put it up on the screen, if, I don't know if you can see that or not, but, the fiscal year 23, ending through May was $45,319,725.36.
Okay.
And the ending in 24 was $34,431,093.32. So that's about a drop of 10.9 million,
Which is better than where we were.
which is, it's large. And so that's how I know that we really don't have the revenues, we're not getting the revenues to support our growth in expenditures. So I know we're going to, we are likely to experience a drop. If you appropriate this gap, of the 1.6, it's going to be a much further drop because that figures into our calculation for what we recognize at the end of this year. So, I just have some concerns about that.
Understand.
And, you know, one thing I had, thought about and talked with Catherine about is, you know, I feel like if you all can give us a chance to look at this, and see if there's anything that I can bring forward to help fill that gap rather than appropriate fund balance and bring
I would welcome that.
some options at your next work session. I would love the opportunity to be able to do that before we drop that much
Okay.
into fund balance
Is
appropriation.
everyone okay with that?
But now,
good,
welcome
good
other
business.
thoughts. If you have other thoughts, other cuts, other
Well,
reductions.
That's the reason I
That's
asked that
certainly what
question
will
at the
help
very
us.
beginning
Yeah,
of
okay.
it. Okay. But, Mr. Chairman, I would find it appropriate to have finance look at to see what gaps can be, covered on that, and, we just need to set a time for the next, budget work session.
well, it's already on the calendar, proposed
10th?
for
10th.
10th.
At 9 o'clock.
10th at 9 o'clock is what
Okay.
we said.
Yep.
Stan? Okay, we'll do that. Take the question mark off the date then. See you then.
Is that enough time, Amy?
I think so. I think we'll just pull together and see if there's anything that we can.
Okay.
I'm not making any promises, cause that's a lot of funding to find. But there are some areas that I wanna look at that, I feel like we may be able to, that may be available. So I just wanna look at that first, and we'll see what we can come up with.
Okay.
Anything else then? If we're gonna do that on the 10th, anything else we need to go through today?
I think we need to just go ahead and recess and come back on
We'll-
Monday unless there's something else we
Right.
need.
Okay. Everybody in agreement?
Yep.
Okay, then, so do we have a motion?
Motion to recess.
Motion to recess until June 10th, 9 o'clock.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, motion carried. Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah.